Okay, for Try It Out Tuesday, we're going to try the Fortin Nameless Suite plugin today. I've seen basically everybody who likes metal guitar tones on the internet absolutely salivating about this. So I'm going to be using my PRS SC245 and my UAD Apollo Twin interface going straight into Pro Tools. The only little snag I hit was that I'm running Pro Tools in 64-bit and whichever free trial version I downloaded only runs in 32. So all I did was use a VST wrapper so I could run the VST version in Pro Tools, and that worked perfectly fine. Let's have a listen to some of the tones and have a look at some of the features. I think if you like metal, you're really going to like this plugin.
All right, when you open up the plugin, you can see straight away it just goes straight to this kind of head default, which looks very cool. That's important with a plugin, right? Kind of looks like the real amp. And then we've got a couple of controls up here. You've got an input gain selector, which I'm just going to leave at 0. Then we've got an input gate, which is really handy because there's lots of gain running here. It can get very noisy. We can select between mono and stereo. We can have oversampling on normal or on high. There is a section to save your presets, which is very handy. And then an output control. And then over here, you can see we've got this very handy little interface, which if I click on this, will bring up the grind pedal, on this, which will bring up the head, and this, which will bring up the cab block. So I think that's pretty cool. I'm going to turn the grind pedal off for now. And then we'll just play around with the amp and the cab. I really like the cab block, actually, because you can see here that you can turn each mic on or off if you want to do a 2-mic kind of thing. I'm just going to stick with 1 mic for now. And we've got a selection of different dynamic, condenser, and ribbon microphones. Let's just stick with the dynamic 57 for now. And I really like this. You can move the microphone left and right. How cool is that? And then if you pull down on the mouse, you can change the distance. So I think a lot of people are really going to like this kind of tactile interface. I really like the similar thing that they have in Mercurial's Reaxis and Spark plugins. So it's really cool to see the Neural DSP guys include something in here as well, which can compare to that. And yeah, I just really like that you can sort of move it around like this. And kind of the way, if you're used to recording your real amp, this is a lot more user-friendly than trying to find the right IR or capture your own IR. So that's super cool. I think Miko from ML Sound Lab made these IRs, so he makes great stuff, and it sounds really good. Let's just have a listen to the straight-up amp tone with everything at noon and the 57. And that sounds really good. I didn't want to like this as much as I do, but as soon as I plugged it in, I was like, yeah, I can see why everybody is absolutely frothing this plugin because it does sound really good. It sounds like the Fortin stuff. What I might try is I'll just run you through some of the different mics. Notice that I should have mentioned when I was doing it, rather than have the SM57 on the cone, the way I would mic a real amp is put it around the cap, and that sounds pretty cool, I think. If you have a listen on the cone, it's a bit harsh. And I think it sounds way better out there. There's also an E906, which is cool. Okay, then if we turn both mics on, you can do something like blend a 57 on the cap and a 121 and pull it back a little bit. You can also bring the level down on the 121, is what I would normally do in the studio. It sounds like this. And then, as we heard earlier, kicking the grind pedal is basically just going to tighten the low end up and drive the mids. And we haven't even touched the amp yet, so that sounds really good. Let's focus on the amp for a second. Standard bass, middle, presence, treble control. We have a master volume control, which if I click on it, will have this pull gain effect. And then we've got high and low inputs. Basically, the low input just uses gain 2. So if you want to skip this gain 1 stage, use a low input. And you get a kind of convincing plexi sort of sound here. That sounds really good, and then we can simply just select the high input if we want to chuck this extra gain stage in front of that. And then you can chuck the grind in front of that and crank it, and this goes wild. And you can hear it has that like super high mid cut to it without too much fizz in the top end, which I think is definitely a good thing. It's very easy for these plugins to sound fizzy. Let's go for more of a metal thing, but first, this is what the pull gain control does. It's like a saturation switch. And that gets kind of nice and sticky, and then you can tighten up the front end with the grind pedal. Very cool. Notice that I'm just on normal sampling here. We'll have a look at oversampling right at the end. I'll turn the pedal off. And, you know, if you're a metal guy, this is really going to appeal to you because it's pretty much what most people do. Hey, pre-boost, high gain head, you know, bright mic, dark mic, the end, put it to tape, put it in a mix, have fun. So let's crank these gain controls here. And I like that you've got sort of gain 1, which you can set low, and gain 2, which you can set high. And I can pull some mid-range out of that. And it sounds like this. And it sounds different whether you've got gain 1 cranked or gain 2 cranked with the pull gain control back to noon. It sounds like this. So for me, the mids sound pretty good crank, but I would back them off a little bit, and I would add some bass, and I really liked it with the pull gain on, so I'm going to crank that, and I will back gain 1 off a little bit, and this is, I mean, for me, this is a pretty happening modded Marshall sound. But it is a little kind of muddy in the low end, so I'll back a little bit of gain 1 off, and I'll put the grind pedal on at noon. Sounds like this. And that's cool. It's got its own voice happening, which, if you're a fan of Mike Fortin stuff, in the sort of realm of modded Marshall tones, of which there are like a billion people working at the moment and have worked over the years, that he's definitely kind of got his own voice, and his amplifiers are, liked by a lot of people for that reason. If we have a listen to it on high oversampling, I think it sounds a little bit sort of more detailed. There's lots of gains, so talking about detail doesn't really make a lot of sense, but feels a little bit better to play anyway. And my only criticism about this, not even a criticism, it's just like it does have that sort of honky mid-range going on, so you might have to back off more mids than you would expect and crank the bass a little bit more, which gives you this. But I like that it's very easy to tweak that back and forth. I mean, on real Marshalls, I don't mind setting the presence on 0, and on this it sounds like this. So that is pretty rad. Playing around with a couple of different mics in the cabinet section, if we went for a 4-2-1 kind of thing, and I will go for a very dark position with this and move it all the way over almost to the edge and back it off, we get this. And again, this is sort of tones that I will dial in. I am not the world's most brutal metal player, but I guess if we wanted to do, ultimo metal and crank the bass and the treble and, let's just put the grind all the way up and the bass all the way up, just because, add a bit of presence and crank the bejesus out of the gain, we get this. That just sounds really silly. So if you sort of go easy with the gain, this is pretty easy to dial in, and likewise with the grind settings. For me, this is probably where I would spend a lot of time playing this plugin. Back the treble off, back the presence off, turn the pull gain on, and crank that. And I think there's a pretty happening sound for a plugin. One last thing, if you crank the input gate, you can do the silly palm mutes thing. A little bit too silly in that case. So anyway, I'm rambling on. I'm enjoying this at the moment. I'm just demoing the, what is this? The Fortin Nameless suite. It's very simple. There are other plugins, I think, which do have a sort of similar layout. Like I said earlier, the Mercurial stuff, Reaxis and Spark. If you're after more of like a classic Marshall thing, or you're after a Boogie Mark series kind of thing, they are probably, you know, more the sort of thing you want to be looking for. But if you want the Fortin stuff, you want that sort of super hyped modern Marshall thing with lots of tight low end, but without all the sort of fizz of a lot of other high gain plugins. This one's really good to look at, and I just like the layout. It's super simple. It's going to appeal to most metal players. There's like everything you need and nothing you don't need to get a really happening sound. And yeah, I'm very impressed by what Neural DSP have done. And yeah, if you enjoyed this video, hit subscribe on the channel. I would appreciate it, and check out my other clips, and I will see you guys around next time. It's been a lot of fun checking out the Nameless suite with you.